desolate, moonlit crossroads of New Mexico, a sinister force is said to prowl the night, preying on those who wander alone. Known as La Malahora, the evil hour, this malevolent spirit strikes fear into the hearts of travellers, her presence a harbinger of doom and despair. The legend describes La Malahora as a shapeshifter, her form ever-changing, yet always unnerving. Some see her as a shadowy, faceless figure cloaked in darkness, her movements unnaturally swift and fluid. Others recount encountering a grotesque, hunched creature with glowing red eyes that pierce through the night. But no matter her form, her presence is unmistakable. The air grows heavy, the silence deafening, and an overwhelming sense of dread creeps over her victims, freezing them in their tracks. The tale warns of her hunting ground, the lonely crossroads where decisions are made and fates are sealed. Travellers who encounter her are said to fall into a trance, unable to look away as she approaches. Her purpose is sinister, for La Malahora does not merely haunt the roads. She feeds on fear and misfortune, her appearance a sign of death or tragedy soon to come. Stories tell of those who tried to flee upon seeing her, only to find themselves disoriented, the road twisting endlessly beneath their feet. Others claim to have seen her at a distance, only for her to appear impossibly close in the blink of an eye, her chilling laughter echoing through the night. And those who speak of looking into her empty eyes say they were left forever haunted, their lives unravelling soon after. To this day, New Mexicans warn against travelling alone at night, especially near the crossroads, for if you see La Malahora on your journey, it may already be too late. Her shadow has fallen over your fate, and the darkness will soon claim you. The legend of HMS Friday is a chilling tale that has haunted the Royal Navy for centuries, a tragic story of defiance against superstition and the disastrous consequences that followed. It is said to be the ultimate proof that some myths should never be challenged. The story begins in the late 17th century, during a time when superstition and folklore held a powerful grip over sailors. Among the most feared of these superstitions was the belief that it was cursed to set sail on a Friday. Ships that embarked on such a day were believed to face certain disaster. Storms, shipwrecks, and death were said to follow those who defied the omen. The Royal Navy, determined to dispel this superstition once and for all, decided to prove that there was no truth to the ancient belief. They would build a new ship, a magnificent vessel, and set sail on a Friday to show that no ill fate awaited them. This ship was to be called HMS Friday, a bold and defiant name meant to mock the superstition and the sailors who believed in it. The ship was constructed with great care and was a marvel of engineering. Its launch was celebrated, and the officers of the Navy were eager to prove that the old fears had no place in the modern world. But as HMS Friday left port on a fateful Friday morning, a sense of unease settled over the crew. Despite their bravado, there was an underlying feeling that something was terribly wrong. first, the voyage seemed uneventful, but soon, strange things began to happen. The weather, typically calm and predictable, turned volatile. Storms began to whip up out of nowhere, battering the ship relentlessly. The crew, though experienced and seasoned, struggled to keep the ship steady against the raging waves. It was as though the very sea itself had turned against them. Then, on the third day of their journey, a catastrophe struck. In the dead of night, with the storm howling like a pack of wolves, HMS Friday was torn apart by a violent crash. Some say the ship collided with a massive, unseen force beneath the water, while others claim it was a huge wave that shattered the hull. The ship sank quickly, dragging most of the crew down with it. Only a handful of men managed to survive, clinging to wreckage in the cold, unforgiving sea. When the survivors were rescued, they could barely speak of what had happened. Their eyes were haunted by a terror that no words could express. What they did say was that there had been something else on board. A presence, a shadow that followed them from the moment they set sail. Some whispered that the spirit of the sea had cursed HMS Friday, and that it would never be forgotten. To this day, the tale of HMS Friday is told in hushed tones among sailors and naval officers. The Royal Navy, after that fateful voyage, reportedly destroyed all records of the ship and the crew, as if trying to erase the curse that had befallen them. But the legend lingers, a grim reminder that some superstitions are not to be trifled with. Those who dare to sail on a Friday may still whisper the name HMS Friday, as a warning to those who think they can challenge fate and live to tell the tale. In the dark forest surrounding Rhinelander, Wisconsin, there exists a creature so fearsome and unnatural that even the bravest souls hesitate to speak of it. Known as the Hodag, this terrifying beast is said to be born of fire and torment, a creature born from the very ashes of suffering. Its legend, rooted in the town's grim past, has lived on in whispers, passed down from one generation to the next. The Hodag is described as a hulking, bull-like carnivore, with massive horns jutting from its head, and a row of thick, jagged spines running down its back. Its eyes burn with a feral hunger, glowing with a vicious intelligence that sends chills down the spine of anyone unlucky enough to encounter it. The creature's claws are said to be as sharp as razors, and its teeth, long, curved and pointed, are capable of tearing through flesh with ease. But it is not just its fearsome appearance that makes it so terrifying. It is the dark story of its creation. The legend says that the Hodag was born from the ashes of cremated oxen, a horrific consequence of the abuse these animals suffered at the hands of their masters in Rhinelander. In the early days of the town, oxen were used for heavy labour, often treated with brutal cruelty. The animals were pushed beyond their limits, worked to the point of exhaustion, beaten and starved until they could endure no more. It is said that when these oxen were finally put to rest, their suffering did not end. Instead, their accumulated pain and rage gave birth to something dark and unnatural, a creature made of their collective torment. One fateful night, after a particularly brutal winter, a large fire raged through Rhinelander. It was said to have started in a nearby barn where the remains of abused oxen were burned. As the flames consumed the carcasses, something strange happened, something that could not be explained. From the heat and smoke, the hodag emerged, a twisted, vengeful incarnation of all the suffering and misery these animals had endured. Its very existence was an embodiment of rage, a creature that would stop at nothing to wreak havoc upon those responsible for the pain it was born from. As the hodag wandered the forest surrounding Rhinelander, it became a terror that haunted the local people. They spoke of its eerie, guttural growl echoing through the trees, a sound that would freeze anyone who heard it in their tracks. Some claim to have seen the beast, its massive horns gleaming in the moonlight, its spine arched in an unnatural curve, ready to pounce. Those who ventured too deep into the woods would often never return, their screams lost to the wind, leaving only the faintest trace of blood behind. The townsfolk tried everything they could to rid themselves of the hodag. Hunters with rifles and traps ventured into the woods, but no one could ever seem to capture it. The beast would always slip away, vanishing into the forest as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only fear and unease. As time went on, the hodag became more than just a story. It became a symbol of the town's dark past, a reminder of the cruelty that had birthed it. Today, many in Rhinelander still speak of the creature in hushed tones. Some say the hodag still roams the forests, its bloodlust unsatisfied, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to cross its path. Others believe it is just a legend, a tale spun from the fear and guilt of a town haunted by its own history. But one thing remains certain. In the dense woods of Rhinelander, under the shadow of the trees, there are whispers of something lurking, something waiting, and if you listen closely, you might hear the growl of the hodag, a sound that will freeze your blood and leave you wondering if the legend is truly just that, or something far more sinister. The biting wind whipped across the desolate expanse of Ilkley Moor, a desolate landscape shrouded in an eerie silence. December 1st, 1987, a date etched in the annals of the unexplained, a chilling testament to an encounter that defies rational explanation. Retired police officer Philip Spencer ventured onto the moor that morning, his camera in hand, hoping to capture the stark beauty of the Yorkshire landscape. He would capture something far more extraordinary, something that would haunt him for the rest of his days. As Spencer walked, a strange unease settled over him, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck. The air grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy. A low hum vibrated through the ground, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. And then he saw it, a craft of impossible design, hovering silently above the moor, its metallic surface gleaming in the pale morning light. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, a shape that defied earthly engineering. Terror seized him, a primal fear that gripped his heart and froze his blood. He raised his camera, his hands trembling, and snapped a series of photographs, each click of the shutter a desperate attempt to document the impossible. The craft remained motionless, its silent presence radiating an otherworldly aura. Spencer, paralysed by fear, could only watch as a figure emerged from the craft, a being unlike any human he had ever encountered. Tall and slender, with skin the colour of polished silver, the figure moved with an unnatural grace. Its eyes, large and black, seemed to pierce through him, reading his very thoughts. A wave of nausea washed over him, a dizzying sensation that threatened to overwhelm him. He stumbled backward, his camera falling to the ground, the click of the shutter replaced by the frantic beat of his own heart. The figure glided towards him, its movements silent and fluid. Spencer wanted to scream, to run, but his body refused to obey. He was trapped, frozen in place by an unseen force. The being approached, its black eyes fixed on him, and then it spoke. A voice, not heard with the ears, but felt deep within his mind. A voice that resonated with an ancient power. The voice spoke of things beyond human comprehension, of dimensions unseen, of realities beyond the veil of our perception. In the heart of downtown Augusta, Georgia, stands a relic from a forgotten time. A pillar, now weathered and decaying, but still towering ominously over the abandoned space where a bustling farmer's market once thrived. Known as the Haunted Pillar, it has long been a source of fear and unease for those who live nearby. The legend of the Haunted Pillar dates back many years, when the farmer's market at 5th and Broad Streets was a lively hub of trade and community. But something dark lingered there, something that would forever tie the pillar to tragedy. Some say the market was built on cursed land, a place steeped in forgotten rituals and hidden sorrow. Others whisper that the pillar was not always just stone, but a marker for something far darker, an object of sacrifice, or a binding spell that trapped spirits. When the market was abandoned, the pillar was the only thing left standing, silent, unmoving, and strange. Over the years, stories began to circulate. People claimed that at night they would see flickering lights near the pillar, or hear hushed voices carried by the wind. Those who ventured too close often reported a sense of suffocating dread, as if the air itself were heavy with the presence of something malevolent. Some even spoke of seeing figures, a shadowed form standing motionless by the pillar, watching passers-by with hollow eyes. But the true terror came from those who dared touch the pillar. Several individuals have disappeared after doing so, their fates unknown, leaving behind only whispers of their names. Locals believe the pillar is cursed, an unholy sentinel that guards its dark secrets, waiting for the next soul foolish enough to test its power. Now, the pillar stands alone, a twisted monument to something that should never be disturbed. And those who walk near it at night often feel a cold, unsettling presence, like something is watching, waiting for them to make a mistake. Some say the haunted pillar is simply a relic of the past. Others know better, and they avoid it, never daring to get too close. In the dark, misty roads of Japan, there's a terrifying tale that haunts the streets, one that sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who dares drive at night. It is the legend of the Headless Rider, a ghostly figure of a motorcyclist, forever cursed to ride the roads without a head. The story begins with a tragic accident that occurred years ago. A young man speeding down a desolate road road on his motorcycle was unaware of the danger ahead. In the dead of night, someone, no one knows who, had stretched piano wire across the road, the thin, almost invisible strands ready to catch the unsuspecting. The rider, unable to see the wire in time, crashed into it at full speed. The wire snapped tight, decapitating him instantly, his head flying off as his body crumpled to the ground. His motorcycle slid to a stop, the engine sputtering its final breath in the silence of the night. But death was not the end for this rider. As the legend goes, the rider's ghost now haunts the road where he perished, a headless figure speeding through the night on his motorcycle. The faint sound of revving engines fills the air as he approaches, and those who have encountered him report seeing a rider in a dark helmet and leather jacket, his hands gripping the handlebars with unnatural force. But when they get close enough, the rider's neck is eerily empty, no head to be found. The headless rider is said to seek vengeance on those who dare drive too fast or too recklessly, as he once did. Many have reported seeing him in their rear-view mirrors, gaining speed until he's almost upon them, only for him to vanish just before impact. But some unlucky few have been followed, and on rare occasions they've felt the chilling brush of a headless figure passing by, a warning to never forget the deadly cost of speed. So, if you find yourself alone on a lonely, dark road in Japan and you hear the roar of a motorcycle behind you, be wary. The headless rider may be catching up to you, ready to claim another victim for his endless ride through the night. In the magical world of The Wizard of Oz, there is a dark and twisted legend that has haunted the film for decades. It's a tale of a shadowed figure, seen briefly in the background, that has sent chills down the spines of those who claim to have seen it. This is the story of the Hanging Munchkin, a haunting image that some believe shows an actor who tragically took his own life during the filming of the movie. The scene in question occurs as Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion make their way through the yellow brick road, and in the background, just for a fleeting moment, a shadowy figure appears hanging from a rope in the distance. The figure appears to be a small, humanoid shape, one of the Munchkins, but instead of standing or moving, it sways ominously, as though suspended in mid-air. The unsettling image has long been thought to show a Munchkin actor who, in a moment of despair, ended his life while filming. Rumours spread quickly after the film's release. Some claimed it was a tragic accident, others swore that the figure was the result of a hidden, dark history surrounding the Munchkin actors. Over the years, the Hanging Munchkin became an urban legend, whispered about by fans of the film, who believed that the ghost of the actor still lingered, forever trapped in the frames of the movie. However, Snopes.com debunked the legend, tracing the figure to a much more mundane origin. Instead of a suicide, the mysterious shape was likely one of several large birds that had been allowed to roam the set. The bird's wings, spread wide in the background, created the illusion of a hanging figure, a trick of the light and angle that fueled the myth. Despite the truth, the legend persists. Some still claim that when watching the film late at night, they catch a glimpse of the Hanging Munchkin, the shadow of a tragedy that never truly happened, but has haunted the film's legacy all the same. dark corners of Chicago's streets, there's a chilling tale that has haunted the city since 1991. A story of a clown, not the jolly kind with painted smiles and squeaky shoes, but a twisted, murderous figure who terrorized the very neighborhoods where laughter once echoed. This is the legend of Homie the Clown, a name that sends shivers through anyone who remembers the whispers of that time. It was said that Homie the Clown wasn't just another entertainer dressed in a garish costume, but a dangerous predator who lurked in the shadows of Chicago's South Side. With a face painted in grotesque, exaggerated features, wide, maniacal eyes, a permanent grin twisted into something far more sinister, he was not there to entertain, but to instill fear. His clown persona was a mask, hiding the true monster underneath. The urban legend began innocently enough. Children in the neighborhood, curious and naive, spoke of a strange figure in the streets, an unsettling clown who roamed at night, offering candy and small trinkets to those who dared approach him. But there was always something off about Homie. His gifts, while seemingly benign, were laced with an aura of danger. No one ever seemed to see him leave, and those who ventured too close to his eerie, silent figure would never be seen again. Over time, Homie's legend grew darker. The tales started to merge with real-life disappearances, and soon a sense of dread fell over the area. The clown wasn't just a shadowy figure anymore. He had become something far worse. A serial killer hiding in plain sight. People began to believe that Homie would stalk his victims, sometimes luring them into his van with promises of candy, only to disappear into the night with them, never to be heard from again. In the years that followed, rumours of Homie the Clown began to spread. They spoke of him preying on children, his sharp, jagged teeth hidden behind his painted smile. Others claimed that he would disappear into the fog, his haunting laugh echoing long after he had gone. But no one knew who he truly was, or if he was even real. Was he just a story told to keep kids in line? Or had the city truly been haunted by a killer clown, a predator who used the innocence of childhood to hide his monstrous deeds? To this day, the legend of Homie the Clown persists. Many dismiss it as a myth or an exaggerated story, but there are those who still believe that somewhere in the dark alleys and hidden streets of Chicago, Homie is waiting. And for those who still wander too far into the night, they might just hear the faintest, most unsettling sound, the laughter of a clown, too twisted to be anything but a nightmare. The 100th monkey effect is a chilling phenomenon that haunts the minds of those who dare explore the boundaries between the known and the unknown. It begins with a seemingly innocent discovery. A monkey on a remote island learns a new behaviour, perhaps washing food in the ocean before eating it. At first, it's a solitary act, unremarkable, until something terrifying happens. As more monkeys observe this behaviour, they too adopt it, until one day a mysterious threshold is crossed. When the number of monkeys practicing the behaviour reaches a certain point, around 100, the change begins to spread, not just among the monkeys on that island, but across the entire archipelago. It's as if an invisible thread links them all, transmitting the new behaviour without explanation, defying logic and reaching groups that have never encountered one another. But that's not all. The 100th monkey effect goes deeper, darker. Those who study it whisper that Once this critical mass is reached, the new idea or behaviour doesn't just spread, it infects the very consciousness of the entire species. The behaviour becomes universal, and with it, something more ominous. Some claim that this event taps into a collective mind, an eerie hive consciousness, where knowledge, ideas, and even emotions can spread without direct contact. What if the effect isn't just for monkeys? What if it could extend beyond animals? What if once a critical number of minds, humans, even, align in thought, the ripple effects could reach across the globe? And what would happen if the collective mind, once awakened, could turn its power against us? The wind whispers through the pines, a mournful sigh that carries the chilling legend of the Jersey Devil. Deep within the pine barrens, a desolate expanse of scrub and shadow. A creature of nightmare stalks the night. Born of a cursed birth, the 13th child of Mother Leeds, a woman said to have consorted with the devil himself. The Jersey Devil is a monstrosity of flesh and bone, a twisted mockery of nature. Its form is fluid, shifting and changing in the swirling mists of the barrens. Some describe it as a bipedal kangaroo, its powerful legs propelling it across the landscape with terrifying speed. Others speak of a wyvern, its leathery wings beating against the night sky, casting a long, ominous shadow over the terrified witnesses below. But all agree on certain chilling details. A horse-like or goat-like head with eyes that burn with an unholy fire. Horns, sharp and twisted, protrude from its skull, framing a face contorted in a perpetual snarl. Small clawed hands reach out from its withered arms, grasping at its prey. And from its back, leathery bat-like wings unfurl, carrying it silently through the darkness. The most terrifying aspect of the Jersey Devil, however, is its cry. A high-pitched, blood-curdling scream that echoes through the pines, a sound that chills the very soul and freezes the blood in the veins of those who hear it. It is a sound that speaks of primal fear, of ancient evil, of a creature born of darkness and despair. For centuries, the legend has persisted, passed down through generations, a chilling tale whispered around campfires. Farmers tell of livestock mutilated, their carcasses bearing the unmistakable marks of the devil's claws. Hunters speak of fleeting glimpses in the shadows of a creature that moves with unnatural speed and agility. And then there are the whispers of those who claim to have encountered the devil face to face, their stories filled with terror and madness. They speak of a creature that possesses an almost hypnotic power, its eyes holding them captive, its scream paralyzing them with fear. They speak of a being that feeds not only on flesh and blood, but on the very fear it instills in its victims. And then, the most chilling detail of all, those who survive an encounter with the Jersey Devil are never quite the same. They carry the mark of the beast within them, a shadow that haunts their dreams and whispers in their waking moments. In the dark, misty roads of Japan, there's a terrifying tale that haunts the streets, one that sends a shiver down the spine of anyone who dares drive at night. It is the legend of the Headless Rider, a ghostly figure of a motorcyclist, forever cursed to ride the roads without a head. The story begins with a tragic accident that occurred years ago. A young man speeding down a desolate road on his motorcycle was unaware of the danger ahead. In the dead of night, someone, no one knows who, had stretched piano wire across the road, the thin, almost invisible strands ready to catch the unsuspecting. The rider, unable to see the wire in time, crashed into it at full speed. The wire snapped tight, decapitating him instantly, his head flying off as his body crumpled to the ground. His motorcycle slid to a stop, the engine sputtering its final breath in the silence of the night. But death was not the end for this rider. As the legend goes, the rider's ghost now haunts the road where he perished, a headless figure speeding through the night on his motorcycle. The faint sound of revving engines fills the air as he approaches, and those who have encountered him report seeing a rider in a dark helmet and leather jacket, his hands gripping the handlebars with unnatural force. But when they get close enough, the rider's neck is eerily empty. No head to be found. The headless rider is said to seek vengeance on those who dare drive too fast, or too recklessly, as he once did. Many have reported seeing him in their rear-view mirrors, gaining speed until he's almost upon them, only for him to vanish just before impact. But some unlucky few have been followed, and on rare occasions they've felt the chilling brush of a headless figure passing by, a warning to never forget the deadly cost of speed. So, if you find yourself alone on a lonely, dark road in Japan, and you hear the roar of a motorcycle behind you, be wary. The headless rider may be catching up to you, ready to claim another victim for his endless ride through the night. The Mississippi Delta, a land of cotton fields and sweltering heat, birthed a legend steeped in blues and shadowed by the devil's touch. Robert Johnson, a name whispered in awe and fear, a musician whose talent transcended earthly explanation. They say he made a pact, a bargain struck at the crossroads under a moonless sky. His soul traded for mastery of the guitar, a price paid in the currency of eternal damnation. The crossroads, a place where worlds collide, where the veil between the living and the dead grows thin. It was there, they say, that Johnson met a shadowy figure, a being of darkness with eyes that burned like hellfire. The devil offered him a gift, a chance to become the greatest bluesman the world had ever known. All he asked in return was Johnson's immortal soul. The young musician, consumed by ambition, agreed to the devil's terms. His fingers, once clumsy and unsure, now danced across the guitar strings with supernatural dexterity. Notes, imbued with the raw emotion of the Delta blues, poured forth, captivating all who heard them. Johnson's music, a fusion of earthly sorrow and otherworldly power, became a testament to his pact, a chilling reminder of the price of his newfound talent. He sang of love and loss, of pain and redemption, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. His songs, filled with cryptic lyrics and haunting melodies, hinted at the darkness that consumed him, the the ever-present shadow of his infernal bargain. His fame spread like wildfire, his music echoing through the juke joints and dance halls of the Delta. But with each performance, the devil's grip tightened, drawing him closer to his inevitable fate. They say Johnson's music carried a curse, a chilling reminder of the pact he had made. Those who listen too closely, who delve too deeply into the darkness of his blues, risk being consumed by the same infernal power that fueled his talent. And then, one fateful night, as Johnson played his final song, the devil came to collect his due. Deep in the heart of Louisiana, in the swampy wilderness of Honey Island, there exists a creature so terrifying, so elusive, that few dare speak of it without a shiver. The locals call it the Honey Island Swamp Monster, a monstrous being that lurks within the murky waters and tangled thickets, hiding from the prying eyes of the world. The creature is said to resemble a massive, Sasquatch-like figure, tall and covered in thick, matted hair, its eyes glowing with an unnatural, menacing light. Its gait is described as lumbering, yet its movements are unnervingly fast when it chooses to reveal itself. Some say it has the scent of rot and decay, as if it's been stewing in the swamp's stagnant waters for centuries. Others speak of its deafening growl, a guttural noise that echoes through the dense trees and ripples the waters of the bayou. The first reports of the Honey Island Swamp Monster surfaced in the 1960s, when a pair of hunters ventured deep into the swamp and returned with a story that chilled the community to its core. They claimed to have seen the creature, a towering figure, covered in hair, with eyes that seemed to burn through the darkness. They also found strange, enormous footprints in the mud, too large and too misshapen to belong to any known animal. When they reported it to the local authorities, they were met with skepticism and ridicule. But as the years passed, more and more sightings began to trickle in. Fishermen, boaters, and hunters all claimed to have witnessed the creature or heard its unearthly howls at night. Some say the Honey Island Swamp Monster is a relic of a prehistoric past, a creature that has survived for centuries, hiding in the swamp's thick, unforgiving landscape. Others believe it is something more sinister, a guardian of the swamp, an ancient spirit who has claimed the land as its own. Whether it is a creature of flesh and blood or a supernatural being tied to the land itself, one thing is certain: the Honey Island Swamp Monster is real, and it waits in the shadows of the bayou, its glowing eyes watching, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to wander too close. If you ever find yourself in the heart of Honey Island Swamp, beware. The swamp has its secrets, and they are not meant to be uncovered. The road stretched out, a ribbon of black cutting through the desolate landscape. The hum of the engine, the rhythmic swoosh of the wipers against the rain-streaked windshield, the only sounds in the oppressive silence of the night. A woman drove alone, the miles ticking by, each one taking her further into the heart of darkness. A prickle of unease ran down her spine, a sense of being watched, of being followed. A pair of headlights appeared in her rearview mirror, growing larger, closer. The car behind her, a dark, indistinct shape, began to tailgate, its high beams flashing intermittently, blinding her with bursts of light. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped her heart. She pressed down on the accelerator, desperate to put distance between herself and her pursuer. The car behind her matched her speed, its high beams flashing again, a persistent, menacing presence. She swerved, trying to shake off her pursuer, but the dark car followed, its presence growing more insistent, more threatening. Terror clawed at her throat, choking off her breath. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her heart pounding against her ribs. Finally, she reached her driveway, the familiar glow of her porch light a beacon in the darkness. She fumbled with her keys, her hands trembling, desperate to get inside, to escape the menacing presence behind her. As she reached for the door handle, the car behind her stopped, its headlights illuminating her car, its high beams flashing one last time. A figure emerged from the pursuing car, a dark silhouette against the headlights. He approached her slowly, his face obscured by shadows. Terror choked her, her scream trapped in her throat. The figure leaned closer, his voice a low whisper. "Check your back seat." She turned, her blood running cold. A shadowy figure lurked in the back, its eyes gleaming in the darkness. The figure in the driveway spoke again, his voice now filled with urgency. "I saw him get in at the last gas station. I tried to warn you." The shadowy figure in the back lunged. There's a dark and twisted tale that circulates online, one that is both bizarre and deeply unsettling. It's the story of the Hippo Eats Dwarf, an urban legend that tells of a circus performer, an acrobat or clown, depending on who tells it, who met a horrific end at the jaws of a hippopotamus. The legend goes that during a circus performance, the dwarf performer was meant to interact with the animals in a carefully choreographed act, entertaining the crowd with his bravery and skill. However, something went horribly wrong. As the dwarf entered the enclosure to face the massive hippopotamus, the animal, typically calm and trained, suddenly became agitated. In a horrifying moment of confusion and fear, the hippopotamus lunged forward, its massive jaws snapping shut around the small man. The crowd screamed, but it was too late. Witnesses claimed that the hippopotamus swallowed the performer whole, a grisly spectacle that left the audience in shock and terror. The circus tried to cover up the incident, but the gruesome nature of the death spread like wildfire, becoming an urban legend that still sends chills down the spine of anyone who hears it. Some versions of the tale suggest that the circus attempted to retrieve the body, but all they found was the empty, bloated carcass of the hippopotamus, the man's remains never to be recovered. Others claim that the performer's spirit haunts the circus grounds, lingering in the shadows, seeking vengeance or simply trying to make sense of his bizarre and brutal fate. No matter the version, one thing is certain. The Hippo Eats Dwarf legend is one that continues to terrify, reminding us of the chaos and horror that can unfold when the line between performer and beast is tragically crossed. single spotlight, his face etched with a haunting sadness. Phil Collins, the opening chords of In the Air Tonight, echoed through the hall, a melancholic melody that sent shivers down the spines of those who knew the dark secret behind the song. The legend, whispered in hushed tones, spoke of a drowning, a tragic event witnessed by Collins himself. A young boy, struggling in the water, his cries for help growing weaker with each passing moment. And on the shore, a figure stood watching, close enough to save the child, yet frozen in inaction. Collins, too far away to intervene, watched in horror as the boy slipped beneath the waves, his life extinguished before his eyes. The song, they said, was a testament to that night, a haunting lament for a life lost, and a chilling indictment of the silent witness. The lyrics, imbued with a raw, visceral emotion, hinted at the darkness that consumed Collins, the burning rage and the agonizing helplessness he felt. The iconic drum solo, a primal scream of anguish, a cathartic release of pent-up emotion. But the legend didn't end there. Whispers turned into rumours, embellished with each retelling. Some claimed Collins had tracked down the person responsible, confronting them in a dramatic showdown. Others spoke of a curse, a supernatural retribution visited upon the silent witness. And then, the most chilling variation emerged, a story that sent shivers down the spines of concert-goers. They said Collins, during his performances of In the Air Tonight, would sometimes single out a member of the audience, someone he believed to be the guilty party. The spotlight would shift, illuminating their face, exposing them to the judgment of the crowd. As Collins sang, his voice filled with a chilling intensity, the lyrics taking on a new, accusatory meaning. The silent witness, they said, would be revealed, their dark secret exposed to the world. Tonight, as Collins sang, his eyes scanned the crowd, a flicker of recognition in their depths. The spotlight shifted, landing on a lone figure in the back, their face pale and drawn. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. The figure, bathed in the harsh glare of the spotlight, looked eerily familiar. A face Collins hadn't seen in years. The face of the boy who had drowned. The legend of the hook is one of the most chilling tales passed down from generation to generation, a nightmare born from the darkest corners of America. It begins as many terrifying stories do, with a teenage couple parked in the isolation of a lover's lane, the night quiet and peaceful, their only company the stars above. But in the darkness, a sinister figure lurks, a deranged murderer with a hook in place of a hand, stalking the unsuspecting victims from the shadows. It is said that the killer, known only as the Hook or Hookman, escaped from a nearby mental asylum, his mind shattered by years of torment and isolation. He had fashioned a deadly prosthesis for his missing hand, a sharp, glistening hook that could tear through flesh and bone with brutal efficiency. For months, he roamed the surrounding area, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. The teenage couple, lost in their own world, would hear nothing at first, just the soft rustle of trees and the occasional creak of the car. But then, a sound, a scraping, dragging noise that sent chills through their spines. The boy, too preoccupied with the girl, would brush it off as nothing more than the wind. But then came the warning, a frantic radio report about an escaped convict, and then the scream. When the couple finally drove off in a panic, they discovered that their car door had been slashed open, and a blood-streaked hook was left dangling from the could still see the figure of the hook watching from the trees, his eyes gleaming in the night. To this day, the legend haunts lovers' lanes and secluded roads, reminding us that there are horrors hidden in the dark, waiting just out of sight. And sometimes, when the night is too quiet and the wind too still, you might hear the scrape of metal against metal. In the quiet town of Frederica, Delaware, there's a chilling legend that haunts the streets every Halloween night. It is the story of the Hanging Man, a figure that appears under the dim glow of the full moon, swinging silently from the branches of a tree along a desolate stretch of road. Years ago, a 42-year-old woman, driven by despair, took her own life in the dead of night, hanging herself from a tree by the roadside. Her body was found the next morning, cold and lifeless, her face twisted in a final, agonizing expression. But that should have been the end of the story. It wasn't. The first Halloween after her death, strange things began to happen. Drivers travelling along that stretch of road reported seeing a figure hanging from the tree, a silhouette swinging gently in the breeze, though no one had ever tied a rope there. But when they stopped to investigate, no body could be found. As the years went on, the sightings grew more frequent. Locals would whisper of a shadowy figure, always at midnight, hanging from the same tree, her body swaying as though caught in an invisible wind. But that's not the worst part. There are those who claim that if you stop your car near the tree on Halloween night and stare long enough, you can see the woman's face, twisted, pale, and filled with sorrow. Some say she will call out to you, pleading for help, her voice barely a whisper in the wind. And some believe that if you listen too